Hello everyone, my name's G. I am doing a Baneblade Octablade guide here on the steps and some of the processes that I went through when creating all 8 variants of the Baneblade. I did this for a buddy, for a commission, a guy I've known for years, and we really just wanted the coolness factor to be a portion of this kit. And to be honest, the kit itself is can be pretty beastly in some areas when it comes to building certain portions of this, and then some of the planning and foresight that comes around actually taking on and tackling a project like this. So as you can see, this is the main portion of the chassis. So as I went through and started out the build itself, I ran into a couple issues. One being using some of the guides that I saw on YouTube. Spiky Bits had put one out. There's a couple others on there that were really good and informative. Everybody had their own way of kind of doing the same thing, and again, I took the ball and went ahead and kind of put my own touches on it, things that I think that were a little more intuitive for myself and the way that I process things. So I guess without further ado, so this portion of the build here, if you're looking at the instructions and you actually have this kit in front of you, these areas here for building this front tread and getting this portion here, you have to pay specific attention. The treads aren't supposed to be glued to this piece here. On the actual tank tread itself and the wheels and everything else, and the gears, it actually kind of free floats over the top of these. So I started with one, glued it in place, made sure it was level, made sure that it wasn't pulling, because if you glue it to this portion, it actually pulls all the treads in, and it becomes quite a mess. I actually had to kind of redo this a couple times before I got it straight. So I went in and I started, I believe, with this center tread, or this tread here, went in, fitted in, and continued to build around it kind of freely, without really connecting it to here or to the hull itself, so it doesn't actually touch this outside portion of the hull. When I did this build too, you'll see the electrical wiring here. I actually added a light kit, an aftermarket light kit here from Fallout Hobbies, just kind of as a rule of cool for my buddy. I went through and left all this open because by the time that we determined that a light kit would be cool, and by the time that we got it in, I was already pretty much done with the build. So I left myself the ability to get back into these portions here by not really gluing anything down. And it's important that you don't glue anything down until you're actually fully satisfied with everything in the way that it comes out. But it is very important to build this portion of the tank up very strong. I used the testers glue here, the plastic weld, the one that comes in the little black bottle with the metal needle that's in here. That seems to be the best glue that's out there for plastics, in my opinion. It does its job, it does it really well, keeps everything very strong, and it bonds fairly quick. You gotta, there's always a cure time, but to me it's not that much. So a couple of things that I did to help make the modularity of this kit itself was I added this piece of sprue on either side of the chassis itself. So this piece of sprue is actually from the kit. I had cut it down, kind of shaved the nubs down a little bit on it, and it's about 3.5 inches long, and it sits down about 1/4 of an inch down from this portion. And all that does is it helps facilitate when you're building like the Stormlord or the Storm Sword or Banehammer, Doomhammer, those variants that even the Shadow Sword and the Bane Sword itself. It helps to keep all the plating where it needs to be. So another thing that I did too was looking at the side plating here. I kept everything modular, and all except for this. We could have added heavy flamers there. My buddy and I made the determination that we'll just keep them with heavy bolters, and that's where we went with that. And you can see here I have some magnets in the tops here, and a lot of this is just smart cutting and then adding and gluing magnets in place. Now the glue I used ended up being the Loctite Super Gel Control. That seems to be my go-to nowadays when I'm building, and it works out pretty well when it comes to doing magnets. So The other portion is that all this is magnetized, so if I wanted to flip the order around of any of these plates to bring the sponsons back or further forward, being that I'm not an Astra Militarum player, iGuard player, I didn't know the actual correct placement, because when you look at the box art and you look at the codexes and everything else, it doesn't say like, hey, this has to be here or not. So we just took the best guess in putting it in the exact center. So I'll go ahead and fit this back on here. So that's there like that. I also left this front piece accessible so that I can get to, again, the lighting kit and wiring it through and bringing it here. So I did a lot of drilling out of the headlight area here. Had to back drill here, actually create quite a bit of wide holes so that this can go back and then down into the actual portion where the treads are. So but the lighting kit, again, it added a kind of a little more flair to the tank. It kind of came out cool in my opinion. So again, with the sprues, that, like I said, this placement for them I found was the best. There's some ones that did some guides online that did really precision, like magnets here. I found that everything kind of slides in and out pretty easy. When you go to put these front plates in here, I added a magnet. I don't know if you can see that too well here, but there's a magnet with a piece of sprue underneath it, and I'll pick this up here so you can kind of see the sprue itself is underneath here, the magnet's set up, and then on the other sides of the hull here, I actually put in another small piece of sprue here and then a smaller magnet. So the two sides of magnets that I used was a 6x1 and a 3x1, I believe, and all that does is it just helps everything stay in place. It's not crazy necessary, but it's just an extra step I took to make sure that everything stays secure. One of the things that the instructions tell you to do right away is glue everything together. Again, like I said, just start with this piece here. Make sure that you're only gluing this together unless you're working in these areas. But when you go to put these plates in, all I did was shave the tabs off that sit in these holes here. So it makes it kind of easy to slide in and kind of get its placing there. And as you can see, it's pretty secure. And then with the other portion too, for the Doom Hammer and the Bane Sword and everything else, this is the other plate here, and I added another magnet and another piece of sprue there so that it would also hold, and it does the same thing. So this build was pretty tough compared to what I've done in the past. I've done Imperial Knights and Land Raiders, and as far as a big project, the amount of magnets that this took and the amount of work and effort in planning was actually pretty tough. When magnetizing these portions here, I didn't show the double magnet stack here. Let me do this without upsetting everything. But you can see that there's a triple magnet stack, and that goes for both sides there. Both of these, all three of these areas here have two magnets apiece that I glued in place and then also held underneath with a little bit of milliput itself, and then tried to make these magnets as flush as possible here so that they wouldn't protrude too much from the top when you're actually setting the armor in. So it gives it this kind of flat appearance here, what you want. Now it does raise up a little bit, but again, sacrifice a little bit for modularity. Get this back in, and here I can see the magnet here, and then back in this area here there's a magnet that comes across the top. Now usually this is a post that keeps, this piece is a post that goes straight through the whole thing and comes down on top and allows it to turn. But I ended up doing a double stack of magnets in here, the 1x3s, making sure the polarity is all right, and then the one magnet underneath to kind of give it a little bit more stability. So the other things, I guess, that in planning for this was the paint scheme itself. When you're trying to make it modular, I saw the videos on how to build all 8 variants. I saw the videos on how to paint one type. It was quite another thing to figure out how to build essentially the tank in all 8 variants and have the camo kind of make sense, and it does. Again, you sacrifice a little tiny bit for modularity, but without further ado, I'll go ahead and get some of the rest of the kit together here. So just in an overall pretty good paint job here on the back. I tried to paint this in the Cadian scheme for Cadia. That happens to be my buddy's iGuard army he loves, and he still couldn't answer some of the questions either about where the sponsons go. But I went ahead and used a combination of Badger air paints, Orc Flesh, Carrick Stone, and some of the khakis and Xandri Dust from GW with just a little thinning, and also to airbrush. So I took an airbrush for most of this, and I used frog tape and a little bit of other masking tape to help mask off the patterns, just cutting a lot of irregular shapes, but also trying to match down and seeing what I needed to do. I took a ton of pictures, but it got a little confusing, so I thought I'd put this video together to help out everybody. So I'll go ahead and get into the Baneblade chassis itself. So all of this is essentially just on there. It has a little key turn system here to kind of get it in there. The only thing I magnetized on this itself is right here behind where the main cannon goes. This is one of those, actually it's 2 of the 6-inch magnets here with a bunch of milliput behind it to hold it in place and allowing it to dry. I also kept the retaining feature here, this little square portion here. I don't know if you can see it too well, but I kept that on there, so that helps facilitate the cannon swapping between the actual Baneblade cannon itself. And let's see here, you can see on this side here I ended up again using the milliput and then keeping that retaining feature in there with magnets. I did a stack of 2 on this side as well, so that there's a pretty strong bond on getting the turret and the cannon together there. So, and it moves, but everything moves, and actually everything traverses still. I kept the mobility in it there. I didn't glue any of those portions in place, just to make sure that everything's good. So that's the Bane cannon. And then you have the Hellhammer, did the same type of thing, kept the retaining feature, just snap it in, straightens out, moves a little bit, but nothing too bad. Straighten it out a bit, and same kind of effect for it there. So overall though, like I said, getting the paint scheme, this is where I started, having the Baneblade as my buddy's favorite variant aside from the Shadow Sword, but I wanted the camo to make the most sense going through here, so I did the chassis and the hull first, and then kind of went up and started to do the turret and the sponsons themselves, and tried to make some sense of it and getting the camo patterns down. So there's that. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off and go to the next portions, because actually the other builds are what take the most time itself. And again, there's those magnets there, and you can kind of see them here. So other things I considered when doing this build itself, and never ever building a Baneblade before, was the polarity of the magnets. So again, I showed you this magnet here. On this side here, I have 2 other smaller magnets. They're 1x3s. They're a little bit harder to kind of make out there, but they're in there. Let's see if it'll focus there. There you go. See them. And for this one, since it's such a thin material piece here, I actually put a piece of sprue underneath to give it a little bit of strength, because when I was drilling through it, I hand drilled everything, and I blew through this portion of the bottom really easy, and I wanted to kind of support it and make sure that it was good, so I had added the sprue underneath that. Now when I'm talking the polarity, obviously it's the pull, the attraction of the magnets versus the push. This is kind of the key piece here in building some of the other variants. On this side, I did 2 magnets here, and it's super thin. If it wasn't for the paint job, I think you can kind of see some of the weak areas on this side. So if you're doing this, just be real careful. And I matched up the polarities here, so this kind of sticks in and holds, not only with a little bit of the friction and pressure, but this is where those sprue pieces come in, and they're super important as far as keeping these plates in place. And that's the main reason for those sprues, is to keep these areas in place. So, but this not only acts as this front piece here when you're building the Bane Sword and the Shadow Sword, but this also acts as the rear plate where the crew stands when they're doing the crew serve weapons. So, and I'll show you here. So again, it was a matter of getting these polarities here, here matched up, and to where they didn't push away, and then also getting the polarities here, and you'll see when I match up the back portion here what I mean by that. And then this, I also magnetized the whole of that too. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get the Stormlord built real quick here. So I have that first piece in, and so what I did was same kind of thing up front here I did back here. And so you can see the two magnets that are kind of recessed in here. So I have another two magnets there. Otherwise, this kind of just fits on, and this isn't actually magnetized in. These magnets are for the other portions. So now here comes that one piece that I was talking about, and making sure that we're good here. And then these two magnets actually meet up. So this is kind of these two magnets meet on the other side, but I put two magnets in here, okay, to meet up with this front portion here. And when I flip this piece, it actually matches up to, I have, if you're looking at the front here, I have a magnet here, and I have one down here. Now what I did was, this had like a big square retaining feature before that, you know, so the cannon wouldn't fall off. I had to shave that out, and then I built it up a little bit with milliput just so that there wasn't this gaping hole. And the other part was I put a magnet back here as well. I put some pine car derby weights here, because as strong as the magnets are, as somebody hits the turret, it's gonna flip up, and sometimes it was canting forward a little bit, so I just changed that. And the trickiest thing I had to do was actually these two magnets here, and those are for the cruiser weapons, and I'll show you those in a minute. So this actually just kind of snaps in and fits, and then you can see that everything is flush. Everything's where it needs to be. One of the other things to think about and consider too is that if you want to make sure that you can make all 8 variants, is that you allow room for the Vulcan Mega Bolter here. The kit comes with 2 different plates. One plate that's more squared off here instead of doing this cut in right here. And I just went with these cutouts so that way the Stormlord cannon itself the Mega Bolter can fit in there, and it does. And so this is more of a friction fit than it is magnets, but I did put a magnet in there. It likes to fight me. But you can see the magnet here, and that's the only magnet, and I left it to where the bolter can pivot itself and everything else. And you can see where it fits perfect here. And honestly, with the other cannons and stuff installed, there is a little tiny bit of space between this and the cannon, but it's again, we sacrificed just a tiny bit for that being able to do everything here. So we have that installed. And so the part that really tripped me up in some of the, aside from the treads being the biggest thing, is the actual crew serve weapons themselves. So these crew serve weapons were a little tricky. I ended up, and it's hard to see because I've already painted and everything else, but there is a buildup of a magnet here, as you can tell, my metal pen here. There's a magnet, and then there's milliput in here that keeps it in the same spot. So, and then where I position the magnets on the inside of this turret, it kind of brings everything down, and so it's able to, well, it's not fitting quite the best right there. Give me 1 second and I'll get the other one on. You can see the same type of thing, but now you have the crew serve weapons in the area where the guardsmen would utilize those crew serve weapons. So, and if they're so strong that if I was to take it off, they would stick in, and you can see again the magnets here and those built up areas with the magnets. It was a little tricky. It was hard because milliput being wet, it wanted to continually pull the magnet through the material, but I waited until it was just a little less pliable and worked it out. And again, that just kind of fits in there, a little bit of friction fit there. So, and then you slide this one out. So this was another little tricky area itself. Getting this magnet stack here is 3 magnets here with sprue behind it going from the top of the cannon down to the bottom. And so I had to put that in there, and getting that, you know, just right and where it needed to be and meet up with a magnet back here was a little tricky, but the strong pull on the other side, I made sure I did this part first and then just stuck it in and then magnetized the other portion on the inside. and just to help out with a little bit of strong magnet. There's a smaller one here with a bigger one behind it. That was actually by accident, but it worked out pretty well, so hey, it was fairly fortunate. And then there's a magnet here that actually mates up with a magnet in here. So, and then I had to do the same type of thing in here to help facilitate some of the support and weight of the other cannon types. But that one snaps in, and then having the magnets up here allows you to do some of the other variants here with some of the other barrels on top of it, so you can kind of see. And then same thing, the milliput with a magnet build up on that side. You can kind of see it's closed off in there. I just painted it to help cover it up. The other thing too is this portion here for the Doom Hammer, the magma cannon, I believe. I don't want to actually push this one all the way in, because for this, the friction actually works, not the magnets itself. I won't push that in all the way, because then I have to actually fight to get it out, and I'm trying not to mar up paint too much before I hand this off to my friend. Oops, you can see a little bit there, but he'll get over it. I'll touch it up for him. Same type of thing, magnet in the back here, built up with a little bit of milliput and a good amount of the Loctite control gel glue. That's what I end up using for that. So those are just some of those variants. And now if you were to make the Bane Sword or the Shadow Sword, go ahead and I'll just take that out. It doesn't need to come off, but I will. Alright, see you later, crew serve weapons. Alright, take the turret off. Alright, so this is where this flips around, and it kind of stays put right there. Again, there's another piece that comes on. It's kind of a cover here with the engines and everything else. This just slides on. You know, he's not going to be hopefully tilting the tank around too much and having stuff fall off. And then this just gets in there, and everything's pretty solid. Go back through. I'll put that back in. And that one's really in there. That one's super strong, and that's again part of why I put that weight back there, because I didn't want it to pitch forward. So then you have the Bane Sword cannon itself here. Again, this is friction mostly. It does have magnets in the end of it here. I did put magnets on the front portion here to help, you know, get the siege cannon, the storm sword, or I'm sorry, not the siege cannon, the volcano cannon for the shadow sword. But the friction in these parts is pretty good. I assume over time it'll break down a bit when my buddy gets it and he's switching through the variants more than I am. But this pushes in here, and then you're able to get all the variants here. I'll move that out. So a lot of the decals I put on, I used Microset and Microsol just to get those down. I've had a really good success with that product. I really like that product a lot. Again, the lighting kit from Fallout, but you know, this is kind of the completed kit. Just being aware of the magnet situation, some of the thinking in it. Some is a little overkill, like the one up here, and even some of the ones in here can be considered, and definitely the one I feel at the end of this. But overall, it was that planning was what was the hardest, and I felt like needed to have the best explanation for what was going on. And I ended up using some weathering powder from Tamiya, and it came out pretty good. So I sent some pictures to my buddy. He has yet to see it in its full glory, so I kind of want to surprise him for that. And I guess last but not least, I will give a light kit here a little glow, and then I'll switch to the Baneblade again and show you the tank crew themselves on there. But it was kind of a rule of cool there, I guess, getting that light kit in there. That was pretty hard. Just patience with all of it, especially during the drying of the milliput and all the magnets and everything else. And then just making sure you get those polarities stacked right, so when you flip this plate, it's not pushing away another plate or causing your turret to topple over. Alright, I'll change this back real quick. All this comes off pretty easy. So again, back to Imperial Knights and Land Raiders. Those are the biggest things that I've tackled. You know, making them look right. And but Camouflage, Baneblades, this was like painting 2.5 tanks because the amount of parts, every part was painted for it. I did leave off of like some of the little extras, like the extra treads and stuff like that. I'm aware of that. My buddy is too, but he's fully satisfied with what we've done here, what I've done, and just asking him on some of the input that he had. You have your tank commander here with his power sword, saying to drive him closer, and then one of the over anxious tank crew with the heavy stubber there. So this is it. This is the finished and completed kit. It was very time consuming. I didn't get a chance to do everything I wanted. Like I said, time and just discussion on this, I didn't have it, and then doing some other stuff by hand. But it was good. I had a good time building it. It was definitely a learning experience for me, and I hope this helps everybody out who had some questions on how to get the build done. So good luck if you undertake this project. I think it's well worth it. Will I ever do it again? Probably not. But I'm glad I can say that I did, and I hope my buddy really enjoys it. So, all right. Thanks for watching.